Welcome to Queer Next, the podcast that puts the yeehaw in y'all means all. I'm your host, Beck.
And I am your host, Dash. Welcome to today's episode. Did you have a good 4th?
Well, we did. We hung out here. We have 3 dogs, so we couldn't really go anywhere. We had to, it was, the people had fireworks all around us.
Did you dose them?
No, we just when we went to bed, we play a thunderstorm at night, and it's really good white noise for covering over firework noises because, the thunders boom and stuff. And so even my Chihuahua ignored it. So that worked pretty well. So we just rode out the storm. It was fine.
Yeah, my cats, I don't, it's hard to compare cats and dogs really in terms of how they react to stuff because they process totally differently. But I've got such a variety of personalities with them, and I think also like intelligence levels. And so 2 of them were chill, and 2 of them have been in an existential crisis for like 72 hours, have not left the bed.
And we're kind of isolated where we are. We're right up against a highway, and there's really nothing but like a new housing complex behind us. So it was people here in the apartment complex that were setting off the fireworks, and I just wanted to go out and whoop them at one point because they just went on forever and ever and ever.
If there was fireworks here, well, there were fireworks here, but they were not Friday. They were Thursday night, which I thought was strange. Friday got rained out, and maybe they knew that was going to happen. It was thunderstorming Friday, so there wasn't much going on. Last night, though, they called it a street dance. This town is so goddamn small that they just block off the whole street, the street that goes through it, with like some construction cones, charge you $10 to walk inside the construction cones. And there's a shitty band playing covers of Lynyrd Skynyrd wearing American flag like clothing.
So you found the rednecks.
And they're kind of cosplaying. Like, I think they think this is what we do. They think we block off Main Street and charge $10 to come to a shitty cover band. I've never seen anything like that in my life.
They're basing it off that song, The Watermelon Crawl.
I don't know where they're getting. I mean, and maybe it was a fundraiser or something. I'm trying to come up with a reason why they would do something like that. But, maybe they're bored also. There's nothing to do here. And so every single one of them just turned out and gave their $10 to walk inside the orange cones to listen to the band. Meanwhile, I'm trying to go to sleep at midnight, and the band is still playing, and I can hear every word they're saying. I heard their shitty cover of Sweet Caroline. I heard their the tone-deaf cover of Hotel California. And to be honest, I enjoyed all of it, but I would not have paid to experience it, especially as somebody who don't drink.
Right.
Maybe there was food, which I'm sure you also had to pay for. Even if I did have disposable income right now, I don't think that's what I would do with it. And it just felt, it was kind of cute in one sense, right? It's almost like a little play date that they all had and charged each other money to come to. And somebody's drunk niece is up there singing covers of Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Karaoke.
It did sound a lot like karaoke because the band was actually good and she was awful. And, so I was like, okay, you guys are having a great time. And that's whatever. It's good, clean fun. You're standing around. There was, safety, paramedics around. And because these folks drink, like Minnesotans, they fucking tear it up. And I was like, they're not driving anywhere though. So whatever. Have you party, but I shan't be attending.
Yeah, I can't get into those kind of street parties, that kind of thing. It's just not I've never been much of a drinker, so it's never been my forte.
And they're only fun.
My friends like doing that kind of stuff when I'm around because I can be their designated driver. I'm well known to be a designated driver. One time we went to Chicago. We went to Pride in Chicago, but the night before there was a street party kind of thing like you're describing. There was like a town festival, and we went to that, and everybody was so drunk. It was wild.
Yeah, I went for my run it was late, so it was probably 8 p.m. And it stays light really late here because it's so fucking flat. Like, the sun has to fully go behind the horizon, almost to the other side of the planet before the light's gone. And so I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm bored, I'll go for a run. And that's how I saw it. They were setting up for it. And I was just running by, listening to them get set up. But it really did strike me as almost like a function. This was not a party. This was not a yeehaw. This is not a hoedown. It was a function. Started at 9 p.m. sharp ended at 1 a.m. sharp. They had the fund they specifically set out to have, and they gave me dirty
Right.
looks when I ran by. They all know me now. They know I'm the tranny that lives on 3rd Street. Normally nobody's out when I'm out on my run, but here they all were and already been day drunk. And I'm just like, hello.
Don't mind me.
And I'd have certainly wore more clothes if I had known. But I also have a case of the don't give a fuck lately. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's summer right now, so I have it real bad. I'm sleeping so much. It's ridiculous. I'm sleeping a lot, and I'm spending a lot of time on my class that I'm teaching for online. This is the first week of the second one that I'm teaching, so there's a lot of discussion boards and that kind of thing that you have to deal with. So I've been dealing with that, and at least gives me something to structure my week, because otherwise I'm not really doing much of anything besides working on this.
Yeah. Well, and I am giving fewer and fewer fucks about what other people think. And I am a state employee, so that's not.
So am I right now. And I'm over 40. I'm approaching 50. And when you hit 40, your give a fucks fly out the window. And as you approach 50, like I went to McDonald's this morning for breakfast with bedhead, no bra on. Nobody has seen you look worse than the people that work in the convenience store and the McDonald's closest to your house.
Yeah.
I don't care what those children that work at McDonald's think of my bedhead. Before, I would have at least brushed it, or put a hat on or something. Nope, I don't give a fuck.
Can I tell you about some online drama I got into?
Oh, yeah.
The Queer Next account?
Oh, no.
It was bound to happen because a lot of folks really aren't adept at recognizing tongue-in-cheek or kind of the kind of thing we're doing here, right? It's just not for everybody.
Right.
And so it was a matter of time before someone would mistake us for like this hardcore MAGA. But the Texas flood has been trending, as it should, because it's terrible. And there's a phenomenon happening on threads where self-described liberals are gloating about, and I know we see this all the time, about natural disasters or just generally bad things that happen to it's southern states. They pretend it's red states, but it's southern and central Appalachian states. Someone posted the MAGA down there in South Texas where they're flooding are crying and waiting for FEMA to arrive with a bunch of like laughing emojis. And if you don't know, dozens of people, predominantly children, have been killed by this flood. And so this just annoyed me. And I replied, I never see ghoulish shit like this about any non-Southern or Appalachian red states. We all saw that map in November. I'm old enough to remember this shit from before MAGA. White liberals have always thought poor people deserve death. And I think a lot of folks were confused about why I said white liberals. I think they just read the liberals part and not knowing that the white feminist critiques and like that we're talking about a particular kind of liberalism that only values certain appropriate lives. And boy, they came for me. And a lot of them were just clearly going through it, and they thought that I was what they, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, if you think that that's what I am, say your truth. That's whatever. Because they were like, you and your orange furor. Somebody was really, really coming at me for being a Trump supporter, and I was like, that's fair. Flame me. If that's what you think I am, go for it. Get them licks in. But other folks wanted to sort of argue. There were two in particular that really got me. This one said, make this make sense. Liberals can't possibly live on both sides of the fence. Either we're bleeding hearts who want to help and save everyone, or we think poor people deserve to die. Which is it? Last I checked, liberals are the party that supports social services and feeding the poor. And so I was like, that's when I realized they thought that I was some MAGA person.
Let's make that clear to our listeners. We are not MAGA people.
No. And so, yeah, I replied, I was like, I just realized you think I'm MAGA. FTD, ACAB, abolish ICE, and stay in school. Kids reading is fundamental. And I said, but since you seem kind of simple, here, I'll make it make sense. A certain type of liberal that are usually white and middle class only hates or thinks deserves to die in this case, the MAGA in insert politically agreeable region, not the ones who are their neighbor. That made them even madder. It was wild. And so they said, I disagree with your statement. I think the white liberals you were referring to are probably not as liberal as you'd make them out to be. And so I said, wow, I haven't seen the No True Scotsman in a while. And I said, may I direct you to Exhibit A, the reason for the season, the very thread upon which we tread. The person identifies as a liberal and is laughing about dead children. I came here to gather, and you came here to defend them. Not only is everything I said accurate, you won't be able to wiggle out of being associated with them, even if you were more artful with logical fallacy.
See, I've given up arguing with people like that on Facebook, because one time I was arguing with a guy and he said something about our forefathers, and I wrote back something, and he really meant our four FOUR fathers that are on Mount Rushmore.
Oh, goodness.
And I was like, wow, you cannot argue with strangers because you don't even know. It's not worth it. So I go for like the jugular on stuff. Like there was a guy named Ethan Hunt, and I said a better name for you would be Mike. Like I go through and make comments like that.
Yeah, I was really tired of a lot of them after a while. He said, well, I'm not replying to your comment about right liberals, saying you claim you saw evidence of this rhetoric before MAGA. So this person thinks Trump invented the phenomenon we're talking about here.
Oh.
And I said, yes, you might say I stumbled upon the roots of America's oldest class war while earning my master's in rhetoric and PhD in American cultural studies. If you're interested in a book to help the healing journey, give Nancy Eisenberg's White Trash a go.
I bought that and have not gotten around to reading it yet.
It's so fucking good. Listeners, if you want a tale about it isn't only about white trash, although that is, she's sort of examining that construct. It's literally almost like a reparative history of America, the one that we just weren't taught. And the last one, I was like, I'm tapping out. Somebody said, last I checked, liberal blue states fund the third world countries that are the South. And I said, darling, wake me up when somebody mentions blue states. You elitist fucks can sit on your thrones and pat yourselves on the backs quietly. This is between the red state liberals. Everybody, nobody else replied to me after that. Like, I didn't block anybody. I didn't do anything. I didn't mute the thread, and that was the end of that.
That's funny.
And I understand what it's like to be angry that something bad happened to someone who doesn't, how would you describe what is going on here? Like, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I think sometimes that people think that people in the red states are holier than thou because of the Bible Belt and things like that. I think that they believe that the so-called liberal people believe that people in red states deserve what happens to them, like you said, because they are so high and mighty, and they do try to claim the moral high ground on a lot of things, even though if you look at things ethically, they clearly aren't. I don't know what I'm like you. It's difficult to put into words exactly what we're trying to say.
It's like they're frustrated. They think we let the team down, right? They're frustrated with red states in general, but there's something about because it goes along with this rhetoric of like you voted against your interests or something.
Yeah, the leopard won't eat my face party, right? Have you heard about that?
I really don't know. And listeners, if you know why these like capital L white middle class liberals cannot stop celebrating the bad things that happen to poor people. There's no other way to phrase it.
Do you think it's an us versus them kind of thing? Like when you're like, there's a lot of times this happens like with different high schools, like we were talking about local areas having grudges with each other, and there's really no beef there, but it's a cultural thing because they think that it's us against them, and there must be something wrong with them, or they must be bad or something, or they would join us. And I think it's the fact that red state people claim a different identity, and they claim different morals, and they claim different everything, really.
America is so fucking huge that the regional differences between, one to another, because, for instance, the state I'm in is fucking empty. It's enormous. So the difference between me in the next town, like the what goes on in this town and the next town, which could be hours away, it's huge. So yeah, it could be a cultural thing. And I think there's something even more complicated here, which is actually kind of, Nancy Eisenberg talks about this in the book a little bit, the history of this rhetoric, which is that like what I call capital W whiteness, right? That proper white middle-class liberal. They used to call it the bleeding heart liberal, right? Mm-hmm. There's a level of privilege in that. As long as white trash exists, those folks don't have to be the bad white person. They don't have to be associated with racism. They don't have to be associated with the history of the Civil War, right? These people here, they don't have to live places where something like the Civil War happened. And so like they kind of need white trash to own the sins of all of America's history.
To be good white people.
Yeah, so that they themselves don't have to be associated with it, and they don't have to do any anti-racist work on themselves.
Right. There's a TED Talk, and I can't think of the guy's name right now, but he talks about, are there any good white people in the room? And it's the fallacy that many people believe that because they don't tell racist jokes or something like that, then they certainly could never be a racist person. They wouldn't have a racist bone in their body, right? But like I describe it to my students when we talk about race, if you think about American culture as a swimming pool, right? And the water is the culture. Racism is like the pee in the pool. When you jump in, you're going to get a little on you, no matter what you do. And if you swim in American cultural waters, you're going to get some racism on you. You're going to internalize that. So that's when you have to acknowledge that most white people have some racism in them based on the way that we were socialized and the way that we viewed media, the way that, our culture is structured. Racism becomes a part of that fabric. It's been generationally handed down for centuries now. So once you realize that you are part of the problem, you have to start doing the work of being anti-racist and start calling out, when you see racist ideology at work or when you see racist practices at work. You have to work on breaking down the structures. If Black people could solve racism, it would have been solved already.
Absolutely.
That problem would have been taken care of. But since they can't, we need white people to get in there and help because we are the ones creating the problem. We can't solve it without actual white people doing the work.
And don't tell me about what you haven't done. I've never used a racial slur. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Because, it doesn't matter what you haven't done. I need to know what you have done.
Yeah,
and does it
exactly.
add up to anything? So in that spirit, I have gathered some resources for supporting Texans in the flood relief. A lot of our listeners are also not from Appalachia. I've noticed on the analytics that it's a lot of people who live in the wider, America, and it could be those folks are part of that queer Appalachian diaspora we were talking about, or they find us interesting. Or they hate listen, either or. But you folks may not know that Appalachia is currently also destroyed by natural disasters, and that happens pretty regularly. So in the show notes for this episode, I'm going to put some resources for supporting efforts to help as much as we can in those regions. There's nothing to do for folks that have lost their lives. People have lost things that can be fixed, like homes and cars. So put your money where your mouth is or shut the fuck up.
Amen. Amen to that. I'm also part of an Appalachian, it's rooted in where I'm from, in that part of Appalachia, mutual aid group.
Yeah. There's the Eastern Kentucky chapter. I was just talking to them.
Yeah, I help with that sometimes too. But I find myself doing more with the animal shelters because those babies can't help it.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that I looked up. Tyler Childers also has started one with some folks called Hickam Holler. It's kind of newer, and they're actually doing a lot right now. We try to be proud of the ones that don't, for the record, J.D. Vance is not Appalachian.
Nope, he's not, and he can kiss my ass.
Rotten hell.
Yeah. I hated his book when I first read it. It's garbage.
Yeah, do not read Hillbilly Elegy.
Yeah, don't. And if you do, go to a library and get it. Don't buy it.
Yeah, pirate that shit. That shit. Read Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingslover.
Yeah, that's really good. Except the last page, and we won't talk about that because Or can we talk about that? Or is that spoiler alert? Talk about the ending of that book.
Yeah, let's not spoil it.
Okay.
Read Dorothy Allison.
That's one I haven't read either. I've read a lot of Bell Hooks though. Audre Lorde.
Hell yeah. I've read a bunch about monsters lately.
Yeah, I bet. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
Well, I still got to revise it and defend it, but...
Yeah, but you're 95%. You got over the hump, man. And that's freaking amazing.
It was terrible. But yeah, thanks. I'll be a Dr. Hillbilly.
I'm almost one, so that kind of counts.
We're going to be Dr. Hilljack soon. I have a new drag name.
What is it?
Abela Hay. Totally stolen.
My favorite drag name of all time is Ivana Hump.
Someone on TikTok posted something. I don't remember her name. Yeah, the Goth was her name. She's a goth lady, and she said a woman told me that she liked her style, but when she started talking, she sounds like a Bela Hay. I was like, motherfucker. That's pretty funny.
That's funny.
What would your drag name be? Not Ivana Hump.
No, God. So I'd be in drag as a boy. Ugh.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's drag has thrown gender out the window, the binary anyway, out the window. Like whatever it is the performance.
I would laugh the whole time trying to be a man. I would. Like, I would be terrible at that. I don't know. I'd try to talk like this or something. I don't know. When I get a cold, I'm like, baby, turn them lights off. And the years of smoking did damage, and I'm almost a baritone.
When I started testosterone, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my family anyway, because I only seen them, every few months. I only talked to them very, not that often. And my voice started to change. For a long time, I would do vocal exercises to raise it back up on the way down to Kentucky, and that stopped working. And I still hadn't told anybody that I was on testosterone. And so anytime somebody would ask, you got a cold or something? And I would say, yeah, I'm sick. I got allergies. And I was like, no, I can't be sick forever. And so I started going, no, this is just what I sound like. And I refused to explain further until everybody got so frustrated with me, they stopped asking. And then like 18 months later, I texted my parents in a group chat and I said, I'm getting top surgery tomorrow. By the way, I'm trans and I've been on testosterone for 18 months. I just like info dumped on them.
Oh, God, how did they take that?
My dad had figured it out. My dad is not a fool and pays very close attention. Not that my mom is a fool, but I think she would take things at face value sometimes. And so he was like, yeah, I figured something was going on. And he went, I will try, but I don't know if I'll ever figure out the pronoun thing. He goes, but what do you want to be called? And at first it was just the name I had always been going by, because I had that name before I transitioned, because transitioning wasn't a thing when I just decided to live differently because I didn't like the experience I was having living as a woman. And so I chose a nickname that was a version of my birth name and then just did gender however I felt. And 10, 15 years later, I learned about transitioning and so I just kept the same name. And so I told him, well, I'm just going to keep that nickname I've had. But now, do you know what they call me? His name. My family calls me my dad's name.
Well, that's different.
Yeah. They wanted a boy. I was the oldest. They wanted a boy. They had planned to name me after him. And then they chose a sort of female version of his name.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah. So I'm like, God damn it. I should have just changed my name to yours.
You're a junior now.
I know. I still consider like actually doing the paperwork but then I would have to rebrand again, and I'm too old for that shit.
Changing your name is difficult. I did it when I was a kid. Between junior high and senior high, I changed from my birth name to my adopted last name. And it's even just your last name is to change it is ridiculous. People have to know you all again. And then I've added my birth name back to my name, back to my email signature, and put it on my door to my office and things like that. And people get really confused if you have two last names. But I feel like, for mine at least, both of my fathers had some influence on me, and they both deserve recognition of me as their daughter. So that's why I use both last names.
Yeah, and I think for someone with a sort of a dual family experience like that makes total sense.
Did you add animals to the wheel of what have you? We had fresh corn for the first time this summer.
What kind? Silver Queen?
I don't know. We got it from the farmer's market out in Grand Rapids. It was super sweet and delicious. We leave it in the husk and bake it in the oven for 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's perfect.
All right, I'm going to spin. Have we had this one before? It landed on school.
I don't think so.
Interesting. Well, school it is.
School is how we met.
That's true. A place that I never thought I would go to grad school. I honestly thought I would never finish my bachelor's.
Same.
It took me 10 fucking years.
I got kicked out of school the first time I tried it. I went 5 semesters and it ended up getting kicked out because I never went to class. Never. Then I waited 10 years and went back and I killed it.
Right.
Absolutely killed it.
Yeah. When I struggled like hell for a decade to get out of undergrad with a 2.8 GPA. I've been just fortunate with people who wouldn't give up on me, I guess. I was a faculty member at this graduate school there at EKU. She saw me at work one day. I was a mechanic at a bowling alley. And she was like, you need to apply to grad school. I'll write you a letter. And I was like, I don't understand the words you're saying. I was like, I just got out of school. And then I was like, and what for? What am I doing? And so I looked into it, and you had to have a 2.75 to apply. So I was like, but she wrote me a letter, and some other folks who remembered me wrote letters, and I took the GRE and just murdered it. I don't know why I can take tests when I can't. There's the things that I can't do are pretty acute, but if I can do something, I scored like 98th percentile on the GRE.
Wow.
So they funded me, even though I had a 2.8 GPA coming in, just on the strength of the letters and then my scores. I excelled in grad school in a way that I never would have guessed based on how undergrad was for me.
Undergrad and grad school are so different. The way that it's set up, the requirements, the expectations, the community that you build is all so different that it really is. It's a different experience.
The cohort model is a really strong support. It's a really strong retention engine. And then the mentorship component of you're like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon removed from peership with people who are doing the work you want to do. And that's just it's a more inspiring or motivating type of thing. So yeah, I've had a 4.0 in grad school.
I didn't manage that, but I've done okay. I did well enough to stay in the program. But I got hazed by one particular professor. That's one of the B's that I got. That was not a fun experience. I had to sit next to him or near him the other day in a faculty meeting, and that was kind of weird. But,
oh, that's the worst, man. Like, yeah, when you become coworkers with somebody who bullied you.
Yeah. And he's been through a lot since that time, so I doubt he even remembers me. Like, his spouse died, and then he had a pretty major medical emergency.
Oh, God, it was him?
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
Yep.
Dang.
Basically, he heard me say that somebody was like, oh, I have to get an A in this class. And I was like, you're in grad school, honey. As long as you get, pass the class, you don't need an A. Grades aren't that important. If you can graduate with your PhD, nobody's going to be looking at what your GPA was, right? That was the point I was making. He overheard me say that. And let's just say he made sure that I understood how important a grade was.
Damn.
So,
fuck him.
Yeah, big time.
Is it post-secondary? Is that what higher ed is?
Yeah.
That was one thing. The school that I think of is the, like, elementary school. I don't know if it's because that's when I was the most miserable. Like, am I the kind of person that thinks of the worst version of something if you say it to me? But somebody says school, I'm having flashbacks, like Vietnam flashbacks to being hunted for sport.
Right.
I mean, maybe there is something. I mean, maybe I should ask myself, like, it can't only be PTSD or whatever that influences how I reflect on the experiences I've had in all of learning.
Do you feel like that carried into grad school, or
specifically with being bullied for being queer, or just?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think that kind of stopped when I went to college, weirdly. I mean, or maybe I cared less. People still called me shit when I went to college, but I didn't feel trapped with them.
I feel like people got more pissed off at me for being a feminist than for being queer.
Yeah, it was the stuff I was saying.
Yeah.
And doing that made people mad.
Participated in my first National Coming Out Day thing. We all put our names in a paper at the school paper at Miami, and there were like 12 of us that did it. And now it's become a tradition. They do it every year. And now it's 2 pages of names. But
Wow.
when we did it, there was very few. I felt very brave for doing that. So I've still got a copy of that in my hope chest.
Yeah, in college, I went to my first gay club, like
Same.
Not bar club, like a school club. They couldn't be official back then. Like, you still had to, they were still meeting in secret. You still had to call the information desk, like the police officer there, to ask them where it was meeting and give the code word or whatever. And sometimes we would write notes in the back of library books, and that's, where we would be meeting. That kind of eased up. Of course, I was in undergrad for 10 years, but also once I found out that those kinds of social clubs were just meat markets, I stopped going.
Yeah, I learned that too. That's the only time that I went to a gay bar in college. Like, I went to the Stonewall in Huntington, West Virginia, maybe a million times. And that was while I was in college. But Miami was like 4 hours away from there. Miami of Ohio, not Florida. And so we went to a bar in Cincinnati once, and me and my friend Jonas, he's passed now, so I can talk about him. It was before Google was a thing, and we heard tell of a gay bar in Cincinnati, and we went there, and it turned out to be like a leather bar. And it was me and Jonas, two preppy looking kids just stayed plastered against the side of the wall. And then I went to one of the gay club meeting things. And afterwards I went to the dining hall, and I ran into some girl that had been at that meeting, and she's like, do you want to go to the bar? And I was like, sure. So we took off and we went to Dayton, and we went to some gay bar in Dayton.
You had to travel to find gay bars.
Well, there was nothing in Oxford.
Yeah, my cousin went to school there. I went to the party school of Kentucky, and it was 20 miles south of the oldest and most famous queer bar in the state. It's actually a national, it's a national historical marker. This is Lexington, Kentucky. We went up to Lexington all the time and to go to the gay bar because back then clubs were 18 and up.
Yeah. I lived in Lexington for a short period of time, so I got to know the gay bars there for a while. I was single when I lived there.
Did you go to Mia's?
Yes.
The lesbian bar?
I sure did. Yep, I sure did.
Monday night karaoke.
I was seeing a girl that was her favorite place, so we went there several times. My time in Lexington was tumultuous. The universe was telling me to move back home. Like everything that could happen that was bad happened to me in that short time that I lived there, and I ended up back in West Virginia. But I liked Lexington. It just didn't like me.
It is a place of occurrences. There are places, I think, times and places to be in Lexington that are simply just best left in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
But I also I told this story before, I used to sneak out of the house in high school and go down to the gay bars in Knoxville. So there was a gay bar down there called the Underground. It may still be there. And it was literally under train tracks in Lexington by the Norfolk Southern train yard there, not too far from the Greyhound station. We would go down there and just go dancing. Wasn't really trying to get into anything, just trying to be around people who weren't going to think I was a freak.
I think that's why gay people are so drawn to gay bars. Not just that we are looking for ass or whatever. It really is the place of community that you can go and be normal and not be the weirdo walking down the street or, the token gay friend or whatever it is. I just wish there were, and this is a common lament, I just wish there were more places that were gay and lesbian themed that weren't bars. For like people like me and you that don't drink very much, what are we supposed to do? Like, why can't we have a library group where we all meet at the bookstore and mingle over smoothies or something? That would be much more enjoyable.
And that's a question for the ages, because I know of times and places and people who've tried various things. And I think it is the self-sustaining factor of a bar is that it is a business and it will make money off of people. So it'll always be there. Something like a group, like a straight person might not know what this feels like to wish you could talk to somebody who knew what you were going through or had experienced what you were going through, and also only have access to that if you put in a ton of emotional labor and a lot of time and effort creating it and sustaining it yourself. So queer spaces are labors of fatigue and extreme emotional expense. It's not weird to me at all that they can't weather all of the things that come for them, I guess. This is why we need allies, but that's one reason why the business model works.
Yeah, that makes total sense. We can still wish for it, though.
Or an ice cream shop.
Yeah.
A queer ice cream shop.
Wouldn't that be great? With nothing but rainbow sprinkles?
Coffee shops have got potential.
Yeah.
I mean, I think coffee shops are it in a lot of locations. It's something else they don't do here.
Yeah. We're here. Not in Toledo, anyway. They do have coffee shops all over BG, but not in Toledo.
It's so weird.
Unless you want Tim Hortons I think college towns are known for having coffee shops and stuff like that. And Toledo isn't so much a college town. They probably have them near campus.
There's one in this college town I work in here, and it closes at noon.
Wow.
Yeah. If you are the person who manages to think of the business first, because there's no competition here, because there's so few people, there's one of everything, you set your own rules. There's a restaurant nearby here on the door, like the stenciled on hours say 11 to close. They will not say what time they close because it's just whenever they feel like it.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're the only version of a thing, then you get to run the game.
Yeah, I guess so.
What was your favorite subject in school?
English for sure. I loved writing and I loved poetry and I loved reading and I loved language. I loved all that kind of stuff. So the English arts classes for sure. I also liked shop class a lot, but that was, in lieu of physics. So
we didn't have shop at my school.
Yeah, we had it. We were lucky to have my senior year. You could take as an elective, like pre-calc and physics. And I'd already gotten into Miami. So I was like, fuck that. I'm taking an easy year. And so I took the 2 required classes. And then I dropped out of choir. So I took shop class and I took home ec. my senior year. It was really fun. I made a door hanging that hung on the door until we moved. It was still hanging there when we said goodbye to my mom's house 8 months ago. It said our last name on it, and it had a sheep on it. It hung right by the door, and I made that with my very own 2 hands when I was in high school. I used a router thing to cut out the little letters and made a sheep. And my mom was like, "Of all things, why a sheep?" And I said, "It represents that nobody gets any sleep in this house." And she loved it. She put it up on the porch, and it stayed there for 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your favorite class?
Choir.
See, that would have been mine, but I had a hag for a teacher, and she hated me. So
That was my first year in choir, 8th grade, but she retired that year. And the next year, we got one of the most like sweetest and encouraging teachers I have ever had, who happened to retire from. It was called Cumberland College at the time. Now it's University of the Cumberland. She had been their chamber choir director for like 30 years, and she retired, and then I guess couldn't stay away, and so she took the job at the high school there. She was awesome. And so I was like, it was the first time I was in a club that felt safe. Like, I knew my job. I was good at it. I was a soprano 1, so I was untouchable.
Yeah, I was just an old alto. I mostly was in choir because you had to take either art or choir, and I can't draw to save my life. I'm a little bit better after taking 3 drawing classes in undergrad. I had to take those for my major. I can at least draw you a basic representation of the thing in front of me, which is something that I couldn't do before.
Not me.
It's a skill that you can learn. It really is. Drawing is a skill that you can learn.
I think I might not have the patience for it.
Yeah.
Because there have been times where I've wanted to. I took it in undergrad too for an elective or something. And, when forced in a structured setting, right, because studio classes for 3 hours long.
Yeah.
I sit down and actually do it and pay attention to technique. I was like, okay, I can put together something that is not terrible. But on my own, I didn't feel that spark of, I just can't rest until I draw this apple.
That's where I'm with cameras. That's how I feel about cameras. For a long time, I couldn't put down my camera.
I feel like that is creativity.
Yeah, it really is. Because a lot of people are like, well, you have a good camera, so you can take good pictures. You can take good pictures with one of the disposable cameras.
With
you
your
can
phone.
Yeah, that's how I do most of my. Have you ever seen any of my flower pictures?
Yeah, I love your flower pictures.
They're all on my cell phone. All of them.
Yeah. Whole movies have been shot on cell phones.
Yeah. And I don't even have an Apple. I have an Android. So.
Infidel.
Yeah, well, it's cheaper. I'm a poor. So
I just loved hanging around the art building. So like in school, something I remember about school, it was more than just like being in classes and learning. It was spaces. It was having access to things that I was very aware that I would never have access to that shit again.
Yeah, me too. Felt so lucky to be there.
Yeah.
Because Miami's campus is so beautiful. And I was the first one in my family to graduate from high school. You know what I mean? So going to college, especially a fancy one, was my wildest dreams come true. And then I screwed it all up by not going to class. But I would sit, I wrote a lot of poetry when I was there, just about how I felt and how the red brick made me feel and how beautiful it was. It's still a gorgeous campus to go visit. Robert Frost said there was never a more beautiful place.
Yeah, when I worked for a McNair program there.
I worked for them.
Yeah, I ran it actually before the year you worked there. And so I took the summer research kids to visit Miami. And
so you've been there?
Yeah, and it is gorgeous.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I don't know if you remember anything about it, but they have what they call Western Campus, which is on the east side of campus. Why they call it Western, I still don't know. But it's where all of the art kids lived and all of the theater kids, everybody like that.
That's why, because it's queer.
And that's except for my freshman year where we were put in assigned dorms, and I lived on East Quad. I lived in West Dorm the other year and a half that I was there on Western Campus. It's a beautiful place. I never lived off campus in Oxford.
What clubs were you in school?
Like high school?
In
high school, I was in all of them. I was a junior and senior class vice president. I was in the drama club. I was the president of the drama club.
Yearbook?
The person that ran yearbook didn't like me, so I didn't get in on that.
That's always a politics game.
Yeah, it really was. I was in French club. I was in Japanese club. I was in business club. You name it. The only one that I refused to join was Bible club. I refused to pretend that I was a Bible thumper. There was
a Christian, well, there was more than one, but Fellowship of Christian Athletes was at my school, and all the athletes were in it. And it was, of course we were expected to, and I never would join it. And I'm sure that wasn't why everybody hated me on my sports teams. I'm sure it was a lot. There's plenty about me not to like, right, from a high schooler perspective. But yeah, I was never going to be a part of the in crowd of athletes because I just could not. What is the point?
Do you want to know the history of it? When the Spanish flu came around, it was the first epidemic in America, right? And they realized that to have healthy white women, to have healthy white babies, they needed to bring exercise into the culture. And that's one of the reasons we do high school sports and youth sports and things like that, was to bring exercise into the lives of American people, especially the white ones, so that we don't get outnumbered. It's the replacement theory. That's racism.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And that's why the Fellowship of Christian Athletes exists?
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's related. You know what I mean? Because it's based in
the right kind of athlete.
Yeah, exactly.
Disgusting.
Did you have to go to school at like 7:30 in the morning?
Yeah.
That was so that the football team could practice after school. That's the only reason, because places like France, they don't start school till 9. Studies show that teenagers work better later in the day.
Weirdly, almost every year of high school, we were on a different schedule because my high school was so small. Yeah, they changed it. They went from block to the one where you do 7 classes a day. And then they tried the multiple lunch thing, and that didn't work. And so, yeah, I don't know if they ever did settle on something.
We had 2 lunches and 7 class periods, 7 or 8 periods throughout the day. I think there was 8. 8th period was, yeah.
The block schedule is a nightmare because it's only 4 classes a day and they are hours long. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Tuesday, Thursday. And so that's how you get all your classes in a week, and it was dreadful.
That's the schedule I'm on teaching this coming semester. I have 2 Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes and 2 Tuesday, Thursday classes.
Did you ever, when you were in school, would you have ever thought that you would be a teacher?
You know, I was the kind of kid that would come home and play school after school. So, yeah, I never really I wanted to be a lawyer when I was a kid because that's what my dad wanted me to do. So I never really thought about it. But if I would have taken 2 seconds to think about what I could actually do, it would have been teacher. My best friend from high school is a middle school teacher now. So we both, and then there's a lawyer. My other best friend is a lawyer. That's one thing I'm proud of. That we both come from a place where there's a lot of drugs and a lot of junkies, and not one of my friends turned out to be a junkie. Not one.
That is impressive.
Yeah. There's a nurse anesthesiologist in there. One girl works in project management for Train, like the heating and air conditioning. My friends have done well for themselves.
Yeah, somehow my brother, I think me and my brother were the only junkies that came out of our family, like the whole extended family. All of my cousins.
You're about to be a doctor.
I know. It's just that none of the rest of my cousins had that phase, right? And they also all went to college. I think one might have been a trade school, but, you know, they all did some sort of post-secondary learning. And that's just like the shift between generations there is wild.
Yeah. My most successful cousin went to DeVry.
I saw a job post at DeVry earlier, and I was like, y'all are still kicking it around?
He's got a great job. They just moved him to New Jersey, right outside of New York City, and he's got a beautiful home. He's a wonderful guy on top of it. So I have over 40 cousins, so to have one that I really love, he's great. The rest of them, meh.
Well, speaking of school, our sponsor this week is somewhat on that topic. This week's episode is sponsored by summer, as in that for which school hath been let out. No more pencils, darn near worn down to the nub. No more 40-year-old textbooks. No more bullies treeing you on the playground. No more teachers asking, are you a boy or a girl? Summer is the time to live free or die, or perhaps both. A small death to the self, so wretched and confusing for the rest of the 3 months. And for us, that's a lifetime. In summer, we tempt fate for adventure. We build all what we can imagine, even if it starts out as a castle and winds up more of a dilapidated fort situation. We draw deep, reflective breaths, the first in what feels like years. We feel the reality of ourselves in brief, crashing waves. Will I ever be normal? Will I ever be happy? We inhabit the minds of our future selves, wondering whether we will ever be them. Summer is for sneaking into the house during the day when you're not allowed until dinner time, and out of the house at night. Summer is for play, of the solitary variety and of the tense and necessary communal variety. In summer, we are the best left unseen and heard of our kin. Our ventures are our own, with no ruling thumb of law to judge our fate. No matter what you say, You face only your peers, so judge your deeds and words accordingly. In summer, with such freedoms, when someone calls you a faggot, you can fight them or fuck them, whichever they are asking for. Summer is a time for replenishing your reserves before returning to the war. And summer is a time for pride. Long live summer. This week's sponsor of Queer Necks.
Nice. Well, the nouns of interest are related to that. So
we're just on theme today. Why don't we just launch right in? Let's do it.
Okay, all right. Well, hey there, y'all, and welcome back to Queer Next, where we open a mason jar full of Appalachian culture and let it fly around the yard. Today's episode of Nouns of Appalachian Interest is glowing, literally, because we're talking about lightning bugs, or fireflies if you were raised on a porch without sweet tea, I guess. Now, some people out there will try to tell you that lightning bugs are just bioluminescent beetles. First of all, rude. Second of all, technically true, but I don't go around reducing your grandma to an elderly biped with strong opinions and an apron full of hot grease, now do I? Now, lightning bugs are pure Appalachian magic. Every summer evening, just as the cicadas start their nightly scream therapy and the air gets thick enough to chew, the lightning bugs rise from the grass like tiny glowing miracles. Some folks catch them in jars, others just watch them blink around like they're spelling out the Morse code for bless your heart. And if you grew up queer in the hills, well, let's be honest, those lightning bugs weren't just bugs, they were a vibe. They were tiny glowing signs that beauty can show up in the most unexpected places, even in your own backyard where everything else felt a little too loud, a little too hot, or a little too hard to explain. Now, it's important to note that no two Appalachian families agree on what to call them. You say lightning bug, your cousin says firefly, and Mamaw, well, she calls them God's little porch lanterns and said they show up just in time to remind us we forgot to bring in the laundry. But whatever you call them, they belong to summer and to us. And let's not forget about the Appalachian science lesson that gets handed down from generation to generation. The kid asks, why do they light up? And the adult says, because God gave them a little flashlight in their butt. Now go catch one and don't smash it this time. Of course, these days, people want to know if it's ethical to catch lightning bugs in jars. Look, I don't know much about ethics, but I do know that if the lid has holes in it and you let them go after supper, you're still doing better than half the people running for office in this country. So here's to the lightning bug, and the bug that blinks, a memory that glows, and a little natural reminder that sometimes the quietest things in the world still know how to shine. Join us next time on Nouns of Appalachian Interest when we ask the hard-hitting questions like why do all of our uncles own deer antlers, and where exactly did that yard couch come from? Until then, keep it queer, keep it weird, and keep chasing the light.
Yard couch.
That's a West Virginia thing if there ever was one.
Oh God, this is pretty brutal, but I'm just going to tell the truth and shame the devil. We used to play what my mom called lightning bug baseball, which, at dusk, the lightning bugs will hover about strike zone height, and we would get our wiffle ball bats and just until they were covered in the bioluminescent butt goo, and then run around the yard with our bats covered in the goo.
Poor bugs.
I know. I still feel bad about it.
I think there was one night, you know how Facebook memories reminds you of things, of different posts? Well, I had one where I'd gone to Mom's after bingo one night, and I was the first one to get there. And there are no street lights at Mom's house. It's out in the middle of nowhere. And I pulled in the driveway, and even the porch light was off. And I looked up in the sky, and there were maybe 10 million stars out and just as many fireflies in the trees. And one of her dogs came up and rested its head on my leg. It was a perfect little Hallmark moment, the whole thing. Like nature was putting on a show just for me, and I was so glad I was there to watch it. It was beautiful.
So my girlfriend is from the Pacific Northwest, and they don't have lightning bugs there. And then one night we were hanging out do you remember Andy?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know which plant got consumed the most over at Andy's?
I do.
Well, we were over there, and neither of us partake that often. But we did, and I was like, I would like to leave now because it was just a party, and I don't even really do those that well. And I was like, no, I'm not feeling this. I want to go to a second location. And she was like, yeah, okay. She was feeling it. She was having a great time, right? She was like, we were in two different levels. And so we walk outside, and the lightning bugs are everywhere, and she's just in raptures, freaking out, chasing them everywhere. And I was like, I need you to calm down. I have to get us somewhere, and you're acting like you're only here because somebody left the door unlocked. But I was trying not to crush her joy because she was really having that was a one in a lifetime experience.
Yeah.
That was rough for me.
Yeah. I like driving this time of year at dusk because when you look out over the fields, the cornfields and things, there's just millions of them. They're everywhere here. It's my
I will
favorite.
say that like summer is responsible for some of the most beautiful single visuals that I remember experiencing. Like, yes, fall is beautiful in Appalachia. Winter is striking and interesting in Appalachia, but summer has the most opportunities to see really interesting things, especially if you are getting up to shit. Like, because the most beautiful stuff happens when you're like not entirely sober and the sun's coming up or something, and you're on top of a ridge you're not supposed to be on. And so summer is that perfect combination of fucking around and doing stuff you probably ought not to be doing and having nature be on full display.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of reasons why a lot of my fondest memories come from summer.
Yeah. Swimming pools and boats and firecrackers and marshmallows. And we always had a pool. My mom, she always kept a pool. So, except I can when we moved to Lucasville, we didn't get one till after I moved out. That took a few years. But the last after I moved out, they got one. They built a deck on the out back and they put up a pool for the grandkids. And so it was just an above the ground, 4-foot pool or whatever. Growing up in the house that I grew up in, we had an in-ground pool with a diving board and the whole thing.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
We sometimes would get those little plastic pools and put them in the trailer park, but we had to take them up at the end of the day or they'd kill the grass.
Yeah. We were the only house on the block that had that pool, though, so we were pretty popular.
I bet. Well, I reckon we ought to get to wrapping this yarn up. It has been wonderful to talk with you after the week I've had and just in general.
I'm so proud of you. Keep kicking ass, my friend. You're doing it for both of us, so good for you.
We're going to get there. Listeners, God knows what you might hear from me as the months progress through this dissertation process. And keep a lookout for the show notes. I'll put some links on ways to help out Texas and their floods and Appalachia and their various natural disasters. And just keep an eye on our space and follow us on Instagram at QueerNex.
We sure appreciate it.
And share us with somebody. Let the folks know that we're halfway between bitching and halfway between telling jokes. All right. We'll say hi to your mom and them.
All right. Thanks, you. Bye.